Okay, as I said again, my name is Leonel Dorvel. I'm a community liaison for the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, which is an initiative founded by Annie Casey, which currently we're operating in 200 jurisdictions in 39 states across the U.S. So we're not statewide here in Minnesota, but we're working on it and we're having those discussions. What is the primary role and focus of the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative? We look at community-based services to assist us, which is a continuum of service that the Department of Correction provides the community that we serve. And that's how we look at it, as service, because we're having clients, and I use that term loosely, that comes to us at some point in their life, and we try to get them back on the right track. So the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative focuses on policy to support those initiatives. We have our mission and our vision, and our mission is basically to seek and produce juvenile system reform. And the reform that we look at is primarily through policy, which we hope becomes institutionalized as best practices. And that's what we strive for. Some of the vision that we look at, that youth will only be detained if at youth for failing to appear for court or is at a risk for rearrest prior to court. So we have been successful thus far in 2005, pre-JDAI. I think we had a total of maybe 95 to 100 youth on our average daily population that come into our detention center versus 2013, I think we're currently operating about 39 youth on average, 35 to 39 youth on average that come into our system, which is a decrease, but we can become better at what we do. And when I say better, it's offering services within the system of the youth who are in our system. So one of the things we look at our objective, which is eliminating inappropriate and unnecessary detention. So one of the examples that was used earlier, without more detail, that seems like one of those unnecessary confinement components. And I think through policy and data is where we're successful or in a unique position that we are at the table with schools having a discussion about some alternatives to suspension, because some of the language that we're hearing, or I have been hearing in the meetings that I have been in, has been, I would say, encouraging, because we are looking at alternative to suspension, and some of those solutions can be peer court or peer-to-peer learning models where youth who are in crisis or going through some things can learn from a peer leader or someone in that role, which is encouraging to say the least. And myself, as a community liaison, I'm able to go into schools and different places and talk to youth about the opportunity that they have based on this initiative, which is an alternative to detention. So alternative to detention is not a free pass from responsibility, because I believe in the right people should be locked up. That's not a question. But I think when we say that, who are we talking about, and what crises are leading towards those kids coming into contact with our system? And I think that's why we're all here, trying to figure out how can we prevent some of those youth from coming into contact with our systems. So the main focus is that we use within our community is collaboration. If we're able to collaborate with community-based services, I think they work with the youth within their community, and it's helpful as a system, as an institution, which I represent, to help the youth on a grassroots level. I can only do so much from my level, but when the youth go back to their community, that's where the real work begins. And I think it's important to emphasize the work begins and ends within that community. So the use of accurate data, when we're talking about numbers and we're talking about the youth that are being detained, what are the numbers? What are the research shows? Who's being locked up? Why are they being locked up? And I think that only leads to us being able to pinpoint on what the issues are versus having this global perspective of all kids of color are being locked up, which sometimes, I guess, takes away from the conversation when we start to use that type of language. case processing reform. I think in looking at what we do, and I have been with the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative for the past 2 years, and I'm a social justice major from Hamlin, is encouraging to see that we look at that. We look at why youth are being detained. Are they being charged appropriately? And we're able to have that conversation with the bench. You know, we can't hold judges accountable, but we can use data to help them understand some of the decisions and recommendations that they make do influence the community to a larger extent that may not be readily apparent. Or the Department of Correction probations, because majority of our youth, like the example used before, that have 90 days on probation, we hope within that 90 days they're able to get some services that can get them back to normalcy, where that may be their only interaction within our system. So those are some of the policy reforms that we really try to focus on, which is community-based and really emphasizing that. And I know it sounds so cliche that the community say community engagement, but it really is that, bringing the community in as a partner and have a discussion, have a frank discussion, because a lot of times I think it's uncomfortable to say we're failing and why we're failing and how we're failing. And I think through outlets such as this, we get that opportunity to discuss that there are some alternatives that are occurring within our community, and how can we access that. So one of the components of this, how can you become involved? If you look, I have a presentation sheet over there that encompasses all our information, and it has my contact information. My greatest thing, and I believe it and I preach it, is the greatest thing you can do for anyone is give them an audience. So we have several communities that committees that focus on case processing, parent engagement, which is the parent in all access points of our system. Our largest steering committee, which is our oversight that provides us the direction for what we're doing and ensures we're on the right track. And our Eliminating Racial Disparities Committee, because we really want to be mindful and conscious that we're doing the right thing and we're not just overlooking a population that may be overly represented within our system. So those are the ways that we provide the community an opportunity to get involved, and through that we have had successes, because we have had some court reform that I won't get into at this point, but if you have an opportunity to go down there, just observe, hopefully you'll see those improvements that we have made to not make this situation better, but hopefully improve that point where you get parents in and out of the system successfully. So that is some of the work that we have done with the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, and I want to be mindful of time. So if I was going a little too fast, please let me know. But I do have a copy of everything over there. All right, thank you.